Hi, my name is Clark, and this is my new channel where I'm going to be focusing on some of the crafting that I've been doing for my Dungeons & Dragons campaign. I've been a regular Dungeons & Dragons player for many years. I started in the very first edition, and I have now a campaign running for almost 2 years with 6 to 7 players. We're all dads pretty much, so sometimes we'll have a different group, like three or four will show up, and the next week a different 3 or 4 will show up. So it's just the way of being a dad. You've got a lot of stuff going on. So in my first video, I decided to feature an hourglass that I made for my campaign, and what I was doing, I was creating a hag home. And in the hag home, I made like this almost like TARDIS style house where there was just lots and lots of rooms inside of a tiny little hut. And so then I Google searched and looked at Reddit for different ideas of creepy stuff to put into this this hag home. And one of the sources, and I'm sorry I didn't reference it, I don't know who put it, but somebody had the idea to put a person-sized hourglass in the place of sand. Tiny teeth of all shapes and sizes flow between the 2 bulbs, each one glowing with a faint red light. The flow of the device switches directions at random times for no visible reason, with no bulb ever holding all the teeth. So that was my inspiration to create this hourglass. And so then, when I started thinking about it, I was like, okay, an hourglass, you know what? I could use that in some challenges, like some time challenges with the, time is ticking by. You have exactly 2 minutes to decide what you're going to do in this next situation. And then I could flip the hourglass over, and now we've got a 2-minute timer. So I'm going to show you in this video how I created this interesting little piece of architecture. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Let's get into it. Zombie halfling crafting. So the first thing I did to get this craft put together is I found a hourglass, and then I matched the hourglass to some lids that I had just found. The red hourglass right there is from a take and toss bowl, and the blue lid, which directly fit inside the red lid, it was from a grapefruit container that I bought, pink grapefruit. So as you can see now, I'm carving out the inside of the lid using a X-Acto knife, and then you just want to be very careful when you're doing this kind of work that you don't cut yourself. So as you can see, I'm always cutting away from myself. I fast forwarded a little bit right there. So the goal of this is to be able to create a ring, and I use 2 sides because that way both sides are really curved. And then I'm going to take the hourglass and stick it right in there. Now I decide the hourglass edges are sticking out right there. So I take the X-Acto knife and I go ahead and just cut the edges of that hourglass off. And that way it won't stick out when I'm done with the final product. So my plan here is to take the hourglass and stick it in between, like glue it in between these 2 rings, and then have like a axis point so that it can pivot that I will just directly connect. And I'm going to just fill those 2 rings up with hot glue so that they become like a solid unit. Now here's the grapefruit lid that I was talking about, and I went to try to carve it with an X-Acto knife, and it didn't work very well. As you can see, I'm just matching it up. So I went to the garage and just drilled some big holes in it with my electric drill, and then I took a big pair of tin snips and cut the first initial cuts out of here. There we go. I'm fast forwarding this so that you can see. Now, the bad thing about using this it's a grapefruit lid, is it's got a screw top. It's designed to screw onto the grapefruit, and those little ridges, they ended up being a little bit of an impediment to it turning. So I'm not sure if I filmed it, but I ended up cutting out a bunch of those ridges that are inside, Now the good thing is I left just enough of those ridges that it kind of locks in place at the bottom and top. Now what I'm doing is I'm cutting a circle, or I copied that circle onto a piece of paper just so that I can find the exact center, and so then I line it up and put a marker on the inner ring and the outer ring so that I can get the exact center, and then I drilled a hole into both of them. Actually, I think I just drilled a hole, and right here I'm marking where I'm going to put the nails. So I think I actually went out to the garage and drilled a hole in that blue one. Yeah, I did, so that the nail would just go right through easily. And then the goal is to stick that nail into the inner ring and have it be a hinge. Now this is the base I'm working on. I just took a piece of cardboard, I think it was actually MDF, and I thought, well, I'll make it kind of about the same size, so I just kind of traced it and then cut it out and then shaved the edges down so that it would be flush to the table. As you can see, I'm taking a little bit extra off because it doesn't have to be a perfect circle, and as you can see later on in the video, I decided to cut that down even more. Now here's the part where I'm taking the hot glue and I'm just going to fill this entire trench up with hot glue. And it didn't really matter at this point that it was cooling off because I wanted it filled so that it would be a solid mechanism. And now I'm going to stick a nail right in there and hopefully have that act like a hinge. And then, wait, there's the other nail for the other side. I had marked where those centers were so that it was really good and centered. Alright, now I'm taking hot glue and filling up the other side. And this one I tried to do a little bit quicker because the goal was to have all of the glue hot so I could flip it over and put it right on top of that other one and make like a continuous piece. So there you go. I'm trying to make sure it's all hot, and that was a little hot on my fingers, but there we go. We slide it right onto the top of that other one. And now we can take our nails and jam them in there into the holes, and boom, we've got our spinning apparatus. Now, I decided that the way I had done it, the nails were a little too wobbly, so I took them out completely, and I decided to do some beads in there and have the beads be the actual hinge mechanism. The glue wasn't strong enough to hold it in place, so maybe I should have cut this part out or just shown this to begin with, but I basically cut out some of the hot glue and jammed a bead in there and hot glued the bead in to act as the hinge. That's just a little wood bead that I found in my house. Alright, so I'm jamming that bead in there, and now the nail will just go right through that bead, and then I put a little bit of hot glue in there just to kind of keep it in place. But we're going to take that other top piece and put that right on top as well. So now, as you can see, I'm making sure that that's going to fit, and then I take some more hot glue and jam it right on there. And the goal is for that now to be our hinge mechanism with those beads. Now the nice thing about doing it this way is I can actually take one of the nails out and I don't have to bend that blue ring to get it installed, because I can just take the nail out, put it in, and then reinsert it. And there's my spinning mechanism. It's working pretty good. Now we've got to take that hourglass and hot glue it into place so that it's in the right place. So there we go. We're taking our just a little bit of hot glue right there, and we're just going to jam that hourglass right in place. And we'll do the other side. Now I put another bead on the outside of the hinge, and that's to help control, that nail and keep it always spinning in the exact same place. So there we go. There's the two beads on the outside installed. As you can see, those nails just fall right out because they're not, although they're acting like a hinge, they're not glued in place in any way. Now I've taken my ring and I've traced it onto a piece of styrofoam, This is the real thin styrofoam that every crafter is always talking about. And then I'm just going to cut a ring out of that piece of styrofoam using my little hot knife there. And now my goal is to take the outside of that. Oh, okay, so wait, no, I've got to carve a hole for my hinge to fit into. So I'm just going to carve right around that thing. And just kind of pry those pieces out so that I've got a place for the hinge to just seat right in there. So here I am taking the hot knife thing, and I'm just kind of carving those pieces out. There we go. There's the first one coming out. Now, I guess I clipped out the part where I cut the outside of it out, but I basically just kind of made it look like staggered rock. And at this point, I'm carving some patterns into the rock using a X-Acto knife, and then I will go back over it with a pencil to make the pattern look bigger. And we're on to painting. So here I'm putting Mod Podge and black paint all over the entire craft. I've gone ahead and glued it to the base, I think, or no, maybe it might just be stucky tape to the base. And now I'm going to go ahead and paint that ring black as well. This ends up being the final coat. I don't actually do any more painting. Now this is the piece of terrain that this hourglass is supposed to sit in my dungeon, and I realize I made that circle too big, so I'm just going to carve a chunk off of both sides of that circle, making it kind of an oval. And I'll just use some normal PVA glue, some tacky glue, to glue that down to the piece of cardstock base there. So now I'm just taking some pieces of styrofoam and carving some little tiny rocks and bigger rocks and just kind of making them natural looking. It took me a decent amount of time to do all these rocks. And then I've got the glue sitting right there. I might have cooked it out, but you can see I'm shaping them all up, and then I'm going to glue them down in just a minute here. There we go. Gluing those rocks in. I don't remember how many I did, but I've discovered over time that it's better to have a mix of rock styles. You know, have a few big and a few small. Right? You know, I did a couple of bases and a couple of things where I just did all big rocks, and it looked clunky and weird. And I realized, oh yeah, you gotta have a few big and a few small, otherwise it doesn't make any sense. So here I am just cutting up some more big rocks so that I can take a look at it. And I'm making sure that I don't block the way the thing turns, the hourglass turns. That's why I keep pushing that hourglass. Now I'm using PVA glue and water, and just drenching it, and then dropping some medium-sized rocks on there, and then I'm going to paint it all up. I think I did some sand as well, some smaller rocks. Those medium-sized rocks, I actually extracted them from some Keurig K-Cup like filters. They ended up being like little pieces of black carbon, and they're a nice size. Now, I've mixed up some Sculptamold with a little bit of water, and my goal here is to fill in the hole that was carved when I had to make that little place where the hinge is going to fit. So that hinge is right in there, and you can see it, so I'm just filling it up with a little bit of Sculptamold. Obviously, I should have done the black paint after I did this step. I don't always do things in the right order. So I ended up black paint and then Sculptamold, and I think later on I have to do some more. I'm sure I have to do some more black paint, but I'm not done painting. So there we go. We're just putting a little bit of Sculptamold right in there to cover up that hinge. Now I put more of that Sculptamold down, like just to kind of fill in the gaps and crevices where those big rocks had not really done a good job of butting right up against the base there. So I'm just kind of spreading that stuff around in different places, trying to make it look more natural looking. this Sculptamold will look like carved rock once I paint it up. So I'm just sticking it in different places to make it look more natural. Okay, I'm also putting Sculptamold in between where the blue grapefruit lid meets with the styrofoam to just kind of fill in those gaps. As you can see, I've got a little cup of water to help me smooth that stuff out so that it looks more natural. We don't want that grapefruit lid to be sticking out as just like this extra piece. We want to kind of blend it all together. So there we go. I've gone ahead and painted it black again, and now I'm dry brushing it with a gray, like a medium gray, and then I'll dry brush it again with a lighter gray. I tend to not paint it black after I've done the black Mod Podge, because I'm just like, well, it's already black, I'll just start dry brushing. So there we go. This is just a heavy bright dry brush of medium gray. Now I'm going to put the skulls on it, and here's a tip that I like to show you. You know, it's not fun to paint skulls, you know, when they're tiny. So I went ahead and painted all my skulls right there on the sprues. So I just took like a pale white, like a off-white, and painted all of my skulls right there on the sprues, back and front. And it took, I don't know, 10-15 minutes. And now, when I go to cut them off of the sprues, they'll just be a tiny little dot that's showing that's not painted. I'll be honest, most of the time I don't even paint that little dot. The way I plant them, they may not even be showing, or when I put it wash down, it won't show. So I'm just going to apply these skulls in a variety of places. And this one I decided, oh yeah, man, it doesn't have to all be skulls. So I used some jawbones and other stuff too. So I'm getting the skulls applied, and I'm not sure why I decided to use PVA glue right here. If you do this, I would recommend super glue, because what happened was the PVA glue wasn't strong enough to keep it in one place long enough, and it started to slip. And so then I actually tore it off and put it back on in a different place because I didn't like where it was, but it's not going to show in this video. So I put little skulls. Now, the ones down there on the ground, the PVA glue was fine, but it's just the one mounted up above, it started to slip. You can see it's not very straight right there. So I did put a wash all over this thing. I forgot I did that. So there we go. We're putting a black wash on it. And, oh, I don't know why I would have forgot it, because take a look at this. It's stuck to my mat. And there, I made a big spill, had black on my nice table and on my thing. So, waste not, want not. I'm going to take my brush and just, right off the table, finish washing this thing before I clean it up. So, I'm finishing doing the wash on it. And that's the end of the crafting portion of this video. I did want to take a minute and shout out a few of my inspirations for crafting. Obviously, I'm not going to send them any money, and they're not paying me anything to do this, but I just really enjoy the videos of some certain YouTubers that have kind of inspired me on how to do this kind of crafting. So I'm just going to name a few of them. Probably the most inspirational for me is Black Magic Craft. I also really enjoy RP Archive, Wylock's Armory. Gosh, I feel like there's a couple more. Bill Making Stuff. He doesn't do very much D&D, but he's funny and I really like him. So thanks for watching, and on to the glamour shots. Peace.